guys, have a quick little video for you. Hope you're all doing well. As always, after this video, if you have any questions or any comments, feel free to leave a comment or send a message. I'll be happy to do my best to answer it. And in this video, we're going to be looking at Izotope's Equalizer that they built into Ozone 5. It's one of my favorite EQs, and specifically this is part of the advanced version. The one part, or the one you'd find in the regular version, is not too dissimilar from this one. However, there are some little special things about the advanced one that really kind of, they're small, but they really make it very versatile. I really love how versatile it is. Pretty much any kind of function you need to do to your mix or to your master, this can kind of handle it as far as shaping the overall tone of really any part of your mix. But let's just get started here. So here's the module. In previous editions of Ozone, I know that it's all been in one module, but now you can actually break it out into a standalone. So you can have an equalizer by itself, multiband dynamics by itself, that kind of thing. So right now we got the equalizer all by itself. Maybe we'll go over the other plugins on a different video. Enough rambling. So your input gain controls right here. Let's click that back. Here's your output gain control, very basic stuff. Obviously you got your presets right here, but we don't want to worry about that too much. We want to learn more about the plugin. They do have some interesting presets though. Band axle air, vary the Q. It's a pretty neat little curve here. One that I actually follow, I've been following for a while by my own mixes before I even knew that's what it was. Let's turn all the bands on here. So to begin with, it's also a graphic equalizer. The spectrum will show up here on the graph. There's three different main menus you can search through. There's EQ bands. Basically that's where you can dial in some numbers. So if you want band 2 to be at 100 Hertz, just like that, and you want it to be at, I don't know, let's say 12 dB, huge boost. There's that. Then it's got the Q. You can also dial in and out. You can also use your scroll function on your mouse to do that. And this right here is actually in charge of the phase, this little area right here and here, and we'll get into that in a minute. Snapshot, this is pretty cool. You don't see this on too many other equalizers, and it's kind of revolutionary. Kind of shows you how much thought they put into this mastering suite. But basically this will allow you to capture the spectrum of other songs and then display it on here to compare your mixes to. So let's see what Dover Gubin looks like. That's by Zed. The original song is Dover Gubin by Zed. And basically I set the snapshot time to be an average over the entire period of the song. And then I can compare my average spectrum balance. So you can see here it kind of starts out with a heavy bass, and it slopes down as it gets higher and higher, and it sort of has this little kind of a bow-shaped curve here. And you'll see that with a lot of dance songs. This year, very similar. Weekends, kind of similar. You can see there's a little bit of a little spike here. Not too different. And you'll also notice that when you put in different songs from the same producer or the same studio, they'll actually come out with a relatively similar curve. Let's load up some more. Let's do Madion. Why not? So I got Icarus right there, Shuriken right there, and that's what both of them look like. So it's kind of interesting. You could delete them just like that. And to capture it, capture the spectrum, you simply hit play, start capture. And that was basically just a short capture of, I don't know, like, what, 8 seconds or something, not even that, from my mix, and you can see how it looks right there. Now obviously if you play it all the way out, it'll be somewhat similar to the ones you saw earlier, where it's kind of filled out a little bit more in the middle. But that's basically how you do it, and you can rename your snapshot. Hurricane, for instance, remix. If you want to do that, I'm just going to delete it because I know what it looks like. Another really useful thing to look at, and it's actually one of the tricks I use when I'm mastering, or I should say I used to use it. Now I sort of do it by instinct. But when I started out mastering, I actually used to follow this pink noise curve here, which you can pull up by simply clicking here. You can also get a different curve. I believe this is actually like green noise or purple noise, but it's this 6 dB guide right here. Basically, it's not quite as bright if you follow it. Anyways, the pink curve is nice because humans perceive, how should I explain this? If you follow the pink noise curve and you have pink noise playing in the background, humans perceive that to be noise that's distributed evenly over the course of the entire frequency spectrum, because our hearing gets a little bit more sensitive from about 1,000 hertz onward. That's just how the humans are. If you play a regular white noise, it sounds really bright to us. It would be a little bit higher up in this region compared to the pink noise. So that's why mastering to pink noise isn't necessarily such a bad idea, because it will allow basically a greater sense of balance within the song. Of course, depending on the style of the music, you might want to change it from pink noise to, I don't know, your own kind of curve. And over time, I've followed this curve less and less, but if you're beginning mastering, it certainly isn't a bad way to start, and you'll start to sort of instinctively follow the pink noise even when it's not there. So matching, that's kind of what we're going out with the snapshot. So apply to, basically it will automatically match the frequency curve. So say you have a pink noise curve on here. Let's put the pink noise on here. And you do match from and apply to. Basically it'll allow you, the mastering suite, to automatically match the EQ curve to this already predetermined pink noise curve, or from another song. So let's say, let's load up one. I hope I'm making sense here. If I'm not, send me a message later and I'll explain it better. So match from, apply to. So basically, if I had my song playing here, it would automatically match the, let's see here. There we go. Okay, so to use matching, you want to take a snapshot of the song you want to match. Then you'll do it, say this here is the song we're trying to match the EQ to. Hit apply to, and say you want the EQ curve from Doverguben, you want the same frequency balance of Doverguben. You'd hit match from, and then hit match, and it will automatically generate a EQ curve to basically smooth out and make the song have the same balance as that other song, at least across the frequency spectrum. This will adjust, obviously, the amount. It's kind of like a wet dry. So that's the most dramatic change, least dramatic change, somewhere in the middle. And then to smooth it out, that's kind of like the Q. So if you want it to be really specific when it comes to the frequencies, you could always do like a super not smooth curve. However, that'll sound really distorted, and I don't recommend it myself. Again, I probably totally botched how to explain the matching, so go ahead and just send me a message afterwards if you have any questions. I don't use it too much myself. It's much easier just to tune it to your own ear when you're using the EQ. But Yeah. So yeah, that's matching. Um, let's go into the different EQ modes. So analog, let's take out the snapshots first. So analog, basically, as you can see here, it says analog modeled curve shapes with minimum phase response. I'm going to get into minimum phase in a little bit. But basically, it's supposed to mimic the curves that you'd find on most hardware EQs. So if you increase here, you see that curve, the way the Q reacts to change. There's different shelves, analog, low shelf. Let me get that. Analog low shelf looks like that. Vintage low shelf looks like that. So they're all very different looking curves. Low pass, flat. Let's do high pass. So it looks like that, kind of a steeper curve, and then the more you adjust the Q, the more of a steep curve you'll get. Resonant, you see this giant resonant there. You can see. And then brick wall. Brick wall is really cool. It will basically remove everything below whatever frequency you're at. Kind of cool. You can do that with low pass too, brick wall. Okay, so you can see that there's different curves there, and you can see that the different types of curves can be selected here. Let's go into digital here. Digital will basically make everything linear phase unless you tell it otherwise. You can also select either minimum phase or mixed phase, and you can also put the curves into surgical mode. Now let me back up a little bit. So minimum phase basically places what's called the impulse response after the like say a transient. If you're hitting like a drum, if you have like a drum sample or something, it'll place the what's called the ring or the impulse response after the sound. Don't get too confused about this, but basically that means all the nasties that the EQ creates by operating are going to be hidden by the sound itself. Now what linear phase does, keep in mind linear phase is traditionally more transparent, but it will put the impulse response both before and after the sound. And so if you have a really transient kind of sound like a snare, it might not be the best EQ type for it. However, I tend to use linear phase, especially in the high range when I'm mastering songs, because it is a little bit more transparent generally. And I know I'm going to get a lot of questions in the comment section, so go ahead and keep sending your questions. I'll be able to answer about the linear phase EQs. Then finally there's mixed phase, which allows you to choose between minimum, linear, and maximum phase. So let's see if we can pull this up here. There we go. Okay, so keep an eye on this little graph that pops up here. This is what the graph looks like when it is in minimum phase, or that's what the impulse response, or the ring you can see is all behind the transient. Now if we move it up a little bit like this, it becomes both in front and behind the that big spike there, and that's linear phase. Now if we move it all the way up, that's maximum phase. You can see that all the phase distortion and stuff is in the front of the transient, or that spike there. So there are all different ways of EQing. What I typically will do, let me restart over. What I will typically do when I'm mastering, put it on digital, put it on mixed, put it on surgical mode. Surgical mode basically allows you to make sharper cuts, better, sharper cuts with your cues. And what I typically will do is on the lower adjustments, I will put in minimum phase, since minimum phase tends to sound the most natural in the lows, and then I put on linear phase, minimum phase down low, linear phase on top, because it is a little bit more transparent and you don't hear it quite as much on the highs. But that's that. And another way you can do that is by adjusting this little P here. If you have it all the way at -1, that's going to be minimum phase. If you have it at 0, it's at linear phase. And if you have it at 1, it's at maximum phase. So down here, we'll put it at -1. Alright, and then up here, we'll do the same, put it all the way up, 0, and then we'll just keep it right there, linear phase. And that's typically what I'll do when I'm mastering. Then I'll kind of adjust the highs and the lows to taste, just after I get kind of a feel for what everything sounds like when it's mixed, or when it's going through that equalizer setting. Another thing that's kind of neat about Ozone's EQ is the mid-side modes. Basically what mid will do, I think I've gone over this in the past, mid will essentially turn up only the middle sounds. So say everything at, let's see, 1317 hertz, all the middle frequency, or all the middle material at that frequency will actually be increased in by 8 dB, 8.1 dB. So that's another kind of neat tool that Ozone's EQ provides for you. What I typically will do is boost the lows, some of the mids and the lows, not quite that much, but just to kind of give you a visual. And then I'll boost some of the sides up high, and that kind of adds a little bit of depth to your master. Keep in mind, this isn't a one-size-fits-all, but I find myself doing this on quite a few tracks, and it's kind of a popular technique amongst Ozone users to use, and it works really well. So that's typically what I'll do. And again, what I'll do is I'll keep this down here in minimum phase, again, because you don't necessarily hear that impulse quite as much when it's behind the sound in the lows. And then linear phase up top, because it's transparent and you don't hear as much up in the highs when it's spread out, the impulse. So that's that. And then another mode that you can use is also left-right. So basically the left channel will be controlled by this green curve here. I typically don't use this mode that much, I'll be honest, but it is pretty fascinating that they even incorporated this into their plugin. So this basically right here would mean that everything at 1216 hertz would be boosted by 5.8 dB to the left, but not to the right, only to the left speaker. Pretty neat. And then you can do the same with the right. This is the right curve, the one that's blue. You can link the two curves. Basically allows you to move both at once. You can unlink them like that. You can do solo. You can also do bypass. And then you can go back to regular. I just think that's absolutely fascinating that they have that in this plugin. But yeah, that about does it for this tutorial. I could probably go on for another 10-20 minutes about all the other things I can do with this plugin. It's unfortunate I only have 20 minutes because it's kind of rushing me a little bit. But again, if you have any questions, especially about the impulse response, linear phase, minimum phase, maximum phase, any of that kind of stuff, leave a comment and I'll be able to answer, or send a message. And again, if you could follow me on SoundCloud, that would be awesome. If you can go subscribe to my other YouTube channel, that would be great. And thanks for watching. Oops.